when I got there, it was like full on, like, to me being 18 years old, it was, a lot of people with schizophrenia and, heavy duty medication and stuff like that. And, it was kind of a shock, and I didn't want to be there, so I'm like calling up my dad and mom every night, like, okay, I'll be better for real this time. They're like, well, they're like, no, like, you're going to have to, like, go through this.
Well, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate having you on, man.
Thank you for having me. I viewed a few of them, and they seemed really cool, and the people I knew. So super interested to find out new things about people. And then we were talking about it the other day, and
and that talked you into it.
yeah,
Kinda, I guess.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. I was like, well, what if one person sees it, that, like, whatever, but like you said, it's to help somebody. And in reality, I don't care if anyone really sees, whatever, I'm secure, like, in my life where, it's cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's the thing. And I'm like, as long as it helps one person, because you're gonna get people that judge. I have not been open about my, recovery, like my job and stuff like that. I've never really. Every now and then, I would have a patient that would be like, the pain that we talk about in the rooms. You see it. We've seen it in the meeting the other day, and we get a lot of addicts, but not everybody is at that place, But you can recognize it, and every now and then I take the time privately to talk to one of them about it. And I had a couple close friends that I had mentioned, talked to them about it before, but other than that, didn't share. So doing this podcast is a big deal, for me as well, to like put my anonymity out there. But the thing about it is it doesn't, to me, at the end of the day, I know that I'm doing it from my heart, and I know that it'll help somebody, so that's why I said I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And for me, I had been that way too, especially in the beginning, because, I didn't have a big, like, I can say that I have hope and I have a success story now, right? So, like, look at through to the end. But at first it was like, I didn't, met a girl. I didn't want her to know right away, like, I wanted to, like, show her like, how good I was before I, gave her the good news that, like, hey, this was my life. And like, now I'm not so worried, because, like, I'm blessed where I got a job, and it happens where the guy that founded the company had, like, 30 some years clean, and, the guy, it's knowing my boss knows and all that stuff. So it's like, is accepted. So I don't feel like I need to hide it, and like you said, the program, the belief I have is that, like, I'm not going to hide something if I can help somebody, in a time. There's been times even at work where, like, I'm working with somebody, and then you get to talking and you find this and that out. The other day I was on a trip, and we're talking about stuff, and I let him know that, like, hey, I'm going to go, tonight, and go to a meeting. And, he's like, oh, I've never gone, but, oh, good. We started talking, and he started talking about this thing in the rooms. And I'm like, I know that. You're like, he's like, you're the only person I've ever met that knows what that is. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm going to a meeting tonight, and it's like, then later on, it must have sunk in his head. He goes, hey, can I go with you? And then I went with him, and, this girl in the room told this story, and it was amazing. Like up in another state, we were traveling, and it it was like his story. It was just perfect, and he's like, wow, man, like, bring a tear to your eye. So it was good stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about, right? Like, if you can just help somebody.
Yeah, and that's how God works, right? You meet this guy, you go to a meeting, amazing story. The guy identifies, and he's like, "Oh wow," and you
now,
get to be a part of that.
Yeah, and I'm still a part of it, because, like, I can help them, or might better their life in a way.
Yeah, and hopefully it's to break that stigma as well. Maybe that'll be a byproduct of it, because believe it or not, most people really love, like, addicts are very creative people, recovering addicts, or using addicts
Yeah.
too, but like very creative. I mean, people idolize them. There's tons of people that are like movie actors
Yeah.
and musicians and stuff like that that people love, and they don't talk about the recovery that much in the public. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. And so hopefully help break the stigma
Yeah,
of.
and it's been a gradual thing for me. I had to kind of like feel it out who, and I still do feel it out, like who I can tell, who I can't. But yeah, I think people are more accepting than I think they are. So like when I look hindsight on it, I'm like, oh yeah, people really don't care so much. And they're actually, if they see you're doing it for the right reasons or whatever. I guess there is like all the reasons are right if you're doing the right thing. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I got you here, man. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
Okay.
We did introduce you?
Uh, No,
Yeah.
Anthony.
Yeah.
Yeah, and been up in here in Jacksonville since 2007. So a little bit about my story, I guess.
How much time do you have?
21 years I celebrated a couple months ago. So yeah,
That's
2 months
amazing.
ago. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. I came in. I was luckily I battled with it for a long time, but I finally came in and
Pull the
admitted
mic
that
a little
I
closer.
finally, when I was 25, I kind of had enough, and I knew that like I couldn't hang out with the people, or I couldn't even drink or do any drugs or anything, um, or I always ended up in the same spot, and I was tired of doing that. It wasn't working, and I admitted that my life gets how it gets every time. I proved it to myself, so I was able to say, okay, this time it's going to be different because I'm going to go all in. I'm going to get a sponsor. I'm going to call people. I'm going to just do the whole thing, not half-ass it. And that's how it kind of works for me. When I half-ass it, I get complacent and fall by the wayside. But if I if I get up and try to do the right thing and stay involved with it all, and I feel like there was a reading I read today, and it was like God doesn't give you more than you can handle. I guess that I don't know if that's true or not, but like I know in my life that I've able to like get through whatever I needed to get through, um, and each day with that. So
Yeah. So you alluded to the fact. So you're not from here.
I was born in England when I was a kid. Yeah, I was born in England, and my dad was like English boarding school, and my mom was like English Catholic school. So I feel like I had a very good upbringing. They taught me what was right, as far as what you're supposed to do, and all that. And I'm super grateful for that because I feel like that kept me from like really like majorly like going down the tubes and not giving a damn, but also I think it allowed me to carry on, what I was doing because I could be smart or something about it, or not get caught, or knew how to act in certain situations, or I was self-sufficient enough to um you know be manageable, like pay my bills and do that, and maybe go to school, until it started, not getting very manageable. So,
Mm.
but yeah, I was born in England, and raised, till I was about 5 years old there. I don't know if I can say I was born like an addict or not, or I can pinpoint when it started. But like I guess my first instance in using was my parents had a party, and I was like 4 years old, and me and my sister were downstairs, and there was like a bottle of wine with a couple of wine glasses where some guy and a girl or something were down there, talking in this house, and I think my sister dared me to drink it, and I was like, so I like drunk. I don't know how much, but I ended up getting alcohol poisoning. And I was like unconscious, and they're like, they just knew I had drunk. They didn't know how much or what was wrong. I was just passed out. So my dad like hit me in the stomach, like to get me to like throw it up. I don't think they had syrup of Ipecac or anything on them. So they, like, I remember being passed out, and doing that even at 4 years old, and then waking up that night and getting to stay up late and eat a banana, and like because I'd never got to stay up like that late before,
Mm.
and that's the first time I ever drunk, if that means anything. But then
Did the hit in the stomach
oh,
actually make you throw up?
that's what they told me. Yeah, I don't even really remember because I was unconscious about that
Mm.
point. But I remember just getting up that night, sitting on the couch in the living room and eating a banana, like, and them like babying over me because I had, they're grateful I was alive, I guess.
Mm.
Um, and then we were Europeans, so there's always alcohol in the house. Not a day went by where people weren't having drinks or whatever. So whenever there'd be company over and whatnot, it was okay for the kids to take sips off the out glasses at the table, and I would be the one out of probably all my brothers and sisters that would like try to get the most, and
Mm.
then steal this and steal that. So yeah, I probably had been drunk several times by the time I was 12,
Mm.
that. But
So you were drinking with a purpose at that age, like to get a certain feeling.
oh yeah, like that was, yeah, like steal a cigarette because it was like the parents did it, but you weren't allowed to. So, and then drink, not just, the purpose was, yeah, it didn't taste good. So it was just try to get the most. Like I remember the first time I tried a gin, and I knew it was the worse it tastes, the stronger it was. And I think I got like drunk so much that I was like telling my brother, I'm like, punch me in the face because I can't feel it. And he would hit me, and I just couldn't feel it. I thought it was amazing. And then I ended up like just sick in the bathtub, like locked the door because I didn't want to get caught, but I'm in the bathtub sick that night. Yeah. So, and that was kind of like not normal. Like I didn't do it all the time. It happened on occasion and whatnot, but, you know, that was pretty, that's why, and it wasn't a big deal. I got, I was trouble for it, but not like bad.
Did your parents suffer with any? Do you think they had like alcoholism or anything like that?
I don't think so. I know like my family, I think, I had an uncle that I think died probably early, had gout and this and that, but he drank a lot every day. Like the food had to be cooked in alcohol and, all that stuff. And, even today, they don't, they drink and stuff on a daily basis, but I've accepted it. I take the view that, I can't, they provided for me and like brought me up really well, so I can't say they are or they're not,
Mm. I got
and
you.
I find it's easier that way because if I start to say that, then it doesn't work, it doesn't help anybody. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, they made it this just because people drink even daily doesn't
yeah,
mean that they
yeah,
have an issue with it.
yeah, yeah,
My aunt and them put their bit. She doesn't do it anymore. But when she was married before, they would, they're both hard workers, go to work every
mm,
day, come home in the afternoon, drink a few beers,
yeah,
and then that's just their cool down. And I think that's a lot of people though. It's
yeah.
not abnormal for people to
Yeah,
come
and
home and
sometimes that can be the downfall because people think that's normal when it sometimes doesn't work for them. And oh yeah, no, I
yeah,
can. That's how it was for me. I'd be like, I can stay away from the hard stuff, but you know, like a little pot never hurt you. Like
yeah,
that's just like it's natural, right, or
yeah.
whatever. But yeah, that didn't work so well. Like every time, it always led to some other place or people or things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, when you're bit by the
yeah,
that
yeah.
bug.
What are they saying there? That if you're a pickle, you can't turn yourself back into a cucumber, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So you had a normal life,
pretty much,
relatively normal
yeah.
growing up.
Until so then, my parents, we were a family. We had meals together and all that. Then when I was 15 years old, you know, they were going to get a divorce, and I like blindsided. I never thought my parents would ever get a divorce. Didn't even think there was anything unhappy or anything like that. And I had lived, I moved to America when I was 5, and I was about 15, so I lived in the same place, the same people, grew up, surfed on the East Coast, and grew up in a stable house, had everything I needed. We were fairly well off. And then they got divorced. And like shortly after they got separated, well, they separated first. And shortly after they separated, my dad was running a big business. And, it was going through troubles because it was a recession. Plus, he was divorced. So he was having troubles with that. So he spent a lot of time devoted to that, and he had moved out to Orlando and Daytona, so he was out of the house. And then my mom moved in to DeLand, where her boyfriend at the time was. And us kids, we lived there, and we were like, well, we want to finish this semester at school. And I was 15 and my sister was 17. So they let us stay there. They paid all the bills, and we were finishing the school semester out for, I think it was like 2 or 3 months or something like that. So we were kind of just left alone, given grocery money, and so that's when, like, I always saw, like, the say no to drug commercials and all that, and I'm like, I'm never doing drugs. Like, you could die, like, if you do it like one time. That was the mentality I had. But then I got older, and all the surfers were doing it, and and then I was by myself, and I was like, well, and I was in a situation where we were like, I was at my friend's house. We snuck out. We used to sneak out to the cemetery and drink beer and smoke cigarettes and stuff. But then we went to his cousin's house, and he had some pot, and I was like, okay. And they started doing it, but I was scared, And then finally, I, like, at the very end, when they were like almost finished with it, it was almost cashed, and I was like, okay, I'll do it, And I did it, and I, didn't even feel anything. But that was like, okay, now I'm on the quest to, like, do it, right? So then, like, I was living by myself with my sister, and that was the hunt, like, to do that. And as soon as I did it, it was like an escape. It was like, I laughed the whole time. It was so good. I didn't think, like, I was so tormented by, like, my parents splitting up and my having to move from where I live for so long with all my friends and surfing and that, to, like, move into a new place where there's no waves and no friends. And my parents were divorced, and, just under the circumstances were, not good. I didn't agree with that, and I didn't have any say in it. And I just kind of, like, got hit hard for it. And this was my new thing. It was cool. I was living by myself. I was getting money, no accountability. We had sold all my baseball cards to buy beer and get a keg party, and and got into that. And then that drug led to another one. I was like, oh, LSD, try that, and I found that. So
that's a quick jump.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was the next logical jump from where, like, the people I was around, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did that. So eventually, like, my parents came to the house, and they found, like, the stack of beer cans, like, in the back of the bushes, behind the house. And they knew things weren't right. I think my sister was getting in a little trouble, like, stealing credit cards. Like, her and her group of friends were stealing credit cards and buying stuff for, like, themselves and their boyfriends and homecoming dress. So, like, the FBI came knocking on the door one time, and I thought it was for me. I thought, like, oh, they know what I've been doing, And then they're like, yeah, we're looking for, your sister. And I'm like, well, she's not home. And they're like, well, we think this is going on. This is going on. Can we come and take a look in this? So I'm like, okay, come at the house, do whatever. I'm, just glad they're not looking for me.
Yeah.
And so I think shortly after that, we had to pack up, and I had to move with my dad. And my sister was old enough. She actually moved out on her own at that point, got a job, finished school. And then my other brother and sister lived with my mom. And
your other brother and sister?
Yeah, I have a younger brother and a younger sister.
So they're like with your same mom?
All the same, yeah.
All the same parents?
Yeah, we're all born in England, except my youngest sister was born in St. Augustine.
Okay.
When we moved here on Christmas Day, 1982. Yeah. And then lived in a hotel for like a month until, like, we got situated, and then lived down in Flagler Beach, an hour south of here. Great little town. Yeah, so I moved to another place, and automatically I had, started using the drugs. So I found a group that was like myself, that did the same thing, so I could get high and live like that. And, that continued. And, living with my dad, he's the old school mentality. He would rather, like, he would buy me, packs of beer, 12 packs of beer, 24 packs of beer on the weekend, so I could do it at the house instead of going out and doing stuff. And you know, but he didn't know I was doing other stuff, besides
Mm.
that, because drinking's cool, normal, right? But
Mm.
drugs are bad. That's the mentality. And then as I was going on in school, it started to like be show that it was being a problem. Like one time I had done some drugs like LSD and didn't sleep for I took it on like a Saturday and didn't sleep for several days, after that. So I was at school and I was strung out and hadn't slept. And, I don't know. So I'm crazy. Like I like got up and told on myself, like in front of the class, like crazy, like,
Mm.
so there I'm in like a school where people don't, know me real well, but then like, felt like I was like, did the craziest thing you could do, and then I had to go to like um, the infirmary at the school, like the nurse or whatever,
Mhm.
and they ended up taking my vitals and that, and they got me in an ambulance and then took me to the hospital and put IVs in me, and not because I was, low on, fluids, dehydrated, and this and that, and that was probably like the first like real sign, like okay, maybe he's got a problem, and I think I went to like a psychiatrist or something like that at that time, and talked about it. My parents both came, and it was kind of a big deal because that happened. But I think within a month or two, you know, things settled down, and I just went back to kind of doing what I was doing, because I was young and I didn't think I had a problem. So that continued, and I was able to graduate high school, and of course, like the normal thing to do was go to college. And throughout this whole time, like my parents, like when I would work at like as a busboy at like 12 years old. And I had a job. So I always like was able to like have money, and I bought my first car, and I was pretty sufficient as far as like taking care of myself and independent. And I could, take care of myself and drive around while, I was doing my, living with my parents when I was young. And then when I went to school, I was working a couple jobs, and I decided like I'd take 6 courses because, I took 6 courses in high school, and I like miserably failed and, dropped out of all 6 courses. I think I lost both jobs. I think I spilt, I was bussing a table for like the anchor woman for Channel 2 News. And, I was really good, bussing this and that, but I spilt the fudge brownie a la mode on her dress, while she did her business dinner. And hence to say, a couple weeks later, they had a talk with me.
Yeah.
It wasn't working. Yeah. So, things led to another, but at that point, after I, went through all that, was kind of like, my dad, they wanted to put me on medication and different things and take me to a doctor, which I was totally like against. I didn't want to have to do something like that and sit down with that. So I went to see this doctor, like Harvard stuff on the walls and all that. And I'm like, I was mad, I was mad because, I think my parents finally like did finish the divorce, and you know, they just wanted to put me on medication because I was out of control or something. It was the answer. So I was like, I was really mad at my dad at that time. And I was like, well, I didn't want to talk to the doctor unless I could talk to him alone, And, my dad wouldn't leave, and the doctor didn't make him or whatever. So I never said a word to him, and he prescribed me this medication that they made me take. And, I took this medication, it's like an antidepressant or something like that, and I had like an adverse reaction. Like I was just kind of depressed and whatnot. But after I took this, I couldn't sleep, and I was just paranoid, super paranoid about stuff for the like couple nights, and then I refused to take it, but they wanted me to take it, so I ended up like getting in a fight with my dad, and we had it out over something stupid, and then I went to live with my mom, at that point, who lived in DeLeon Springs, who, at that time, I did not, I blamed the divorce on my mom at the time, not knowing, not being mature and not knowing people kind of try the best they can during certain, when they try, parents normally try the best they can at the time they have with what they have. It's not always perfect, but some parents, not all, but some. And I blamed her, and so I didn't talk for after like the divorce and that period of time when I moved with my dad. I didn't talk to her very much for like a year because I was mad. I blamed her for everything because in my eyes, she was the reason why, which isn't necessarily true. It's not true. It takes two to tango and all that stuff. So, but I moved in with her because I was out of options with my dad. I had burnt my bridges and all that. So she was happy. Well, not happy, but she was like, I'll take him back because I hadn't lived with her for so long. And now maybe, this was a chance for me to get better and then also maybe reconcile for her and me. So I lived with her for a bit, but, I think I went to my first like treatment center at that point because I started using again. And I went to like a Charter Springs in Ocala, which was, like a rehab, but I think I was just turned 18 and they wouldn't let me go with like the youth people. So I went with like, the older, like crazy people in there, like I'm the youngest person in there. I'm like 18 years old. And like everybody else is like old and messed up, like it's hard to relate. And, but, I guess a good thing and a bad thing came out of that visit was that like I got introduced to like a 12-step program, right? They had meetings in there and I sat in there and, I felt like I maybe needed something like that. But then these people were also like far more like down the road and messed up for me. So I didn't want to like continue living my life doing that, because it was hard to relate. And then I picked up smoking cigarettes, like chain smoking cigarettes while I was in there too. So, anyway, I ended up going through that, which was like the big deal. I was in there for a month and it was, supposed to be life changing and all that, and, fix you. And then you come out and then you live a normal life. Right. But I just went back to living where I was living and, working different odd jobs, whatever, roller skating rink or at Friendlies or something like that. And then I started using again. I was now living in DeLeon Springs, right, like in the middle of nowhere, pretty much. And no matter where you are, you can find a way to, there's people that do things and find a way to do what you want to do. So I lived out there, and at that time, I had used with my brother, few years before. So like when we would get together, we would use with each other and, use each other's, get drugs together and all that. So, I started hanging out with all his friends out there and, doing drugs and whatnot. And, I think, it got to the point where I just didn't even care really. I think my mom would catch us and then we'd just be like, leave us alone, and all that while we're living in her house. And I ended up like getting in fights with my stepdad, like full on like punching fights and stuff like that. Yeah.
Physical fights.
Yeah. Yes. You just, stuff like
I'm
that.
sure you didn't, with everything happen with your family, you probably weren't very happy with him to start with.
Well, yeah. At the time, of course, I thought it was justified. I think he might have just like been joking around, referring to my mom as a bitch or something, but like not a bad, like, some people joke, oh yeah, she was acting like whatever. So I was like, no, you don't call my mom that, and then he backed me up and then we had it out, so, luckily I didn't get arrested there. Cause I told him it was self-defense cause he came at me first. Right. And all that. But
so were you still a minor at that time?
I was 18 years old.
That's right, because you turned 18 for the program. Okay.
Yeah. Well, exactly, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so then I still kind of battled with it, and I got depression and whatnot. So I would agree to go to like the crisis unit, when I get in that state, or they want to put me on medication, or they try to do an intervention. So I did a few stints in there for a few days, a week or whatever, and then I get back out.
Doing medication, psychiatry medication and stuff.
I think
off and on, maybe.
Yeah, off and on a little bit, but I don't think anything major at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I continued doing what I was doing, and I wasn't going anywhere. And I think everyone was sick of it. So I think my stepmom, my dad's wife, she's a nurse, so she heard about this program in Lakeland, and my mom felt I wasn't listening to her or being productive or doing anything like what I should be doing. So they suggested I go there, and I was like, okay, well, what is this place? And I agreed to go there, and so we went all the way out there to Lakeland, and basically dropped off there in this. It's a kind of a big program out there that they have several. They have like the initial place. They have the crisis unit. They have a day group thing, and then they have other group homes that you move to hopefully finally get out.
Mm.
But when I got there, it was like full on, like, to me, being 18 years old, it was a lot of people with a schizophrenia and heavy duty medication and stuff like that, and it was kind of a shock, and I didn't want to be there, so I'm like
Yeah.
calling up my dad and mom every night, like, okay, I'll be better
Yeah.
for real this time. They're
I
like, well,
promise.
they're like, no, like, you're gonna have to like go through this, and
I can only imagine for like I've worked in psych facilities before, and I've
yeah,
worked in like some of the intense units. And as an adult, I remember first walking in that unit, and I was scared. I was like, and I was working there, so I wasn't, you know what I mean? I wasn't
yeah,
like a patient pushed into that or something. I signed up for the job, and
yeah,
I went on there. I was like, this is scary. So I can only imagine because the stuff you see, when people are, suffering from psychotic breaks or in full fledged schizophrenia, it's like scary to see because it's so abnormal from like what you see in everyday life. So I can imagine an 18-year-old dropped off and put there, you're probably like, holy cow.
yeah, like, what are you guys doing to me,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and you do see stuff, and I hear stuff, and sometimes that do feel threatened or get a threat. So it's not a pleasant place to be, I guess. But at the same time, those are the times that I remember, like, part of where it took me in my life. And so yeah, so I basically had to like go in there and get a job and start going to school, and for a while, and then my dad bought me an $800 little car, and I got that so I could get about and whatnot, and finally got out of there. And I think I didn't use, but I was out by myself, in an apartment, going to school, and doing all that. And I got depressed, and I just couldn't really deal with life on its own terms. I wasn't going to any meetings. Any meetings that I went to in there were kind of like forced meetings. And I did go. I got exposed to a few different ones there, which was good.
Mental health and 12 step.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, both. Yeah,
Yeah. And then when
they go out and take you out to
okay,
yeah.
to regular old
Yeah,
meetings.
like the druggy buggy.
Yeah.
Like the white van,
Yeah.
and all that, sit in the back and feel like, you're different than, the rest of the world that you're in. And, that's why sometimes when I go back and I like to, if I go into a place like that to speak, I kind of feel comfortable because, it's, reminds you of how it was, that, yeah. So, I spent a while in there. I would spend like a year or in maybe a half the first time before I got out. And I graduated to like an assisted living program where they like, you live there, and they're kind of like a manager of the house, but you have your own little apartment, and you can't just come and go. You got to sign out if you do. You can't like go out at night just because you want to sign out and do stuff. There's curfews, and you had to pass like a white glove cleaning thing in the room and all that stuff. But it taught me how to cook, taught me how to clean, taught me what I was doing. But then, it's the first chance I really got where I could go out and get high. I'd ride my bike out, while I was there, and go get high and then come back, and and got away with that, for a while. But then after the second time I got out, I got out. I wanted to get out as soon as I could because I now figured I could get a job, save up money, and get out. I got into heavier stuff at that time in that location, like meth and all that other stuff. And I had nobody to stop me. I could,
Mm.
as much as I wanted to work and earn and use, I could. And it started to get more and more and more. And until that little voice in my head was just like what my parents instilled in me, like like you can do better than what you're doing, and knowing like the addictiveness of this, like this drug, I kind of felt if I moved away from here, because it's so easy to get, if I moved away from here, like I could stop doing this before it gets bad,
Yeah,
or like
which
real
I
bad.
think we all think that at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And at the same time, not looking at what I've been through, and where it's taken me in my life so far, like, maybe you should just stop altogether or not do this. But yeah, I instead like looked at like, oh wait, I could change the oil, clean my room, and get all my chores done and all this. And it was just, yeah. So I ended up like leaving, getting out of Lakeland, moving back in with my mom up in Palm Coast.
I want to real quick on that. I want
Yeah.
when you talk about like not knowing, and I'm like, it's been like a revelation of mine over the last year or so, and it was just like the lack of knowledge that I've had. Um, I also realized it in my recovery, but it's more apparent, and hopefully that's where the awareness will come in for people that watch this and have not been to meetings. But the lack of knowing about the disease of addiction and this, like the signs, the symptoms, uh, like it talks about in our literature, like if you think you might have a drug problem,
Yeah.
you probably do, because normal people don't wonder whether they have a drug problem or not. And when you are out there using it and you don't have any references or any knowledge or information about
Mm.
what to do to get better, you have a lot of those thoughts, such as geographical changes, and it'll if I get out of this location, I'll do better, or if I only use this substance, I'll do better. When that's just not the case when you suffer from the disease of addiction. So, hopefully that'll be like another thing that this podcast will bring to light, is that like awareness that like of the things that we learn, in these 12-step programs.
Yeah. And I had a lot of what ifs, like, you know, what if my parents didn't send me there and they just let me go to meetings or something like that, or if you know if they would just not like ridicule me because of it and just accept that I can just do this or something, like, but it was so rigid, like I'd use that as an excuse, like they don't understand me. And it just, I wouldn't be open to anything to try to stop. I mean, it probably wouldn't have stopped anyway, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So you moved back in with your mom.
Yeah, I moved back in, and I got in a car wreck, and just got in. I was using as soon as I moved back. I was still using, and got in a car wreck, and got on some pills and whatnot, and all this, and then I think uh, I got depressed or something like that, and I got introduced my mom knew some people in a 12-step program, and they came and 12-step me, and I started going to AA because at the time they didn't have any other programs besides that, and I didn't, alcohol was not my drug of choice. I mean, if I did it, I normally did it because I wanted to get messed up, but I wasn't like physically addicted at that point. I don't think to that. So anyway, but it was the only thing going. So I would go there, and I got like 9 months or clean or something like that. But I wasn't working any steps. I was just going to meetings, meeting people, and then I got the money from the car wreck. After I had stayed clean 9 months, and so I got a bunch of money from getting hit in the back in a car wreck, and I just decided it'd be a good idea for me to move in with my brother, who was using at the time, but I wasn't. So it was like, okay. And then, live like that. But then it like really went off the deep end at that point because I had a bunch of money. We're living. He decides to move his friends in, which is like, him and his brother and his dad, and then another one of their friends, and me and my brother there. So it's like the total like party house. and it was just awful. Like I got to the point it was fun at first, but then like I couldn't stand living there with the people there with all the commotion and all that different stuff. And
And
I
you got money, and they probably know you got
yeah, and they
money.
try to get the money off me, and then I'm like on the bad guy because I wouldn't give them money or this or that or any of that
Mhm.
stuff, and it was just like uncomfortable, and it just got worse and worse and worse, and everything got worse. At that point, the drugs, the type of drugs going on there, and just uh, and I thought, okay, well, if I just stop doing drugs, I'll be able to like have money for myself and be able to deal with these people and be okay. I could still hang out with all the people and all that, and it lasted for like a whole total of like 1 or 2 days or something like that, and I was just going with withdrawals on the floor, and one of my roommates was like trying to give me pills to try to feel better. But like in my head, I was like, I got to stop. I can't even take this. Like, I got to sit here and I got to deal with it. So, and everybody's like, whoa, he's like on the floor. He's messed up. He's not doing anything. He's not doing it. So they called my mom, and my mom came over and got me like on my birthday. I think it was either my birthday or the day before my birthday. And then she took me out of that house, and I got out of that house, and I got, she knew people from the first time I was in there, and they came over and 12-step me, and talked to me, and got me going back into the program there. And so I continued to go and do that for a while, and I ended up going in there, and I stopped hanging out with my brother altogether, and I stopped hanging out with all those people, and I started just going to meetings. And I think everyone kind of thought I shunned everyone, and I felt bad for that because now I didn't have any drugs. I'm living at home with my mom, and I'm like super depressed, and I don't have all my friends with me anymore, and I got like nobody, and I'm just going through what I'm going through, and I'm like totally like crazy, and I'm in area where there's like AA, but it's a retirement kind of community, and everybody's like 60 years old, 70 years old, a bunch of old
Mhm.
men. So I'm like a young guy, and like I come in there and I don't want to like go bowling with them and all this
Mhm.
stuff. So luckily there was a group of people that and I got at this time I got appointed a sponsor, like normally it's like Steve's going to drive you to meetings, and
Yeah.
so I'd go with him, and he was like a guy from Georgia with like a mullet, and like
Yeah.
like nothing like you would think from first looks that you'd have anything in common, right? But
Mhm.
he'd take me anyway. That was kind of his job. He was new to the area, and he would take me there, and I would just like I'd go. Sometimes I'd walk out of the meeting and go in the church and just like crying, and you know all this stuff. I think I went to the pastor of that church, and he's like, well, like maybe you're demon possessed or something like that. Like I was like, oh shit, like that's the worst thing like you could tell somebody, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, like okay, like how do you admit that?
Yeah.
So it was just like, I was just going through like a really difficult time, and I you know, I wasn't really getting better in a lot of ways. I was getting worse as I was going on. Even though I was going to meetings and whatnot, I wasn't doing like a lot of the things. I was like trying to, intellectualize, do the steps by myself or something like that. But I wasn't like going there early, talking to people, getting involved with stuff, and, doing stuff. But then a group of people started another meeting that was kind of like more along my lines that would help. And we actually started that meeting, and it's called the Baker's Dozen. And now like there's like 15 meetings there in that area
Mhm.
now, so it went from nothing to like there was something a long time ago, but then it dwindled out or whatever. So we did that, and I met a bunch of like young people, and we'd go to conventions, we go to Daytona and all that stuff, and we'd go to all those places. And
How
I
old are you in this
at
this
that
time
time,
frame?
well, the time when I finally like decided that and I surrendered. I admitted that I can't hang out with people. I can't do anything. Well, I was 25 years old. I had turned 25 a
Mhm.
couple months. Um, yeah. So it's 25.
25.
Yeah.
And so that was your clean date
Yeah.
from then. You stayed clean from then.
2002. Yeah.
2002.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had time. About how much time for this Baker's Dozens?
So we started the Baker's Dozen before because I relapsed one time. Since
Okay.
then, yeah, I was around at work, and and I had uh, some guy was selling dope, in the weed in the place, and I was sitting there, and I was like, around it every day. It crept in my head, and I wasn't really, being vigilant, working a program or doing any steps or really putting a lot of effort in there. And I got lazy, and I decided to get some, and I did it for a couple of weeks. So I started over. I kept coming back every time I come in, still go to the meetings every day, and then own up on myself. Feeling like like I screwed up, and everyone's good, like going to judge me and all that stuff. And I'd pick up a white key tag, and that went on for a couple of weeks till I was finally like, why am I doing this? Like, it's not even like, it's not even doing anything. So that's when I got clean, and for real that time. And we had already started the Baker's Dozen group at that point. Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to conventions and like getting involved.
Yeah. We're going to conventions. I was working the steps. That the same guy, Steve, he continued to be my sponsor, and we started doing the steps over after I, picked up the last white one. And, he was somebody that, unconditionally showed me, he helped me just because somebody else has helped him the same way. And he'd drive into meetings, we'd talk, and, I built enough trust up to, start working the steps and, work the fourth step, and, spill my guts, the thing I was afraid of, like, write everything down and then actually tell somebody, and it wasn't so bad because at that, he had to correct me because I had trouble seeing, what do they say? Seeing the stars through the trees or something like that. Or, like I thought, well, I was justified in this because they did this to me. So that, I didn't look at my part. And he's like, no, you got to write like what you did and why you did it. It doesn't really matter what they did to you so much. I mean, you have to take everything into consideration, but like what your part is. So it sent me back, and I rewrote it all, and then I had to come back and do all that. And, it turned out to be a good experience because he everything that I had done, he's like, oh yeah, like I've done the same thing. So I wasn't alone. I wasn't, unique in a way like that. And then
which is a huge thing because when
it is huge, yeah. And it's been reaffirmed, like like you're reaffirmed throughout, like when I met my other sponsor, and then talk to him about a bunch of stuff. Like he reaffirmed the same thing. Like I'm like, oh yeah, okay, like yeah. So
yeah, because you feel so isolated and alone, and that you're the only one that feels like this. Nobody understands me, and then when you get open and honest and you share with somebody, like, oh yeah, I did that too. Not only are they able to provide solutions on how to work past it, but you're like, I'm not alone.
It's just that's it. It's the fear, just like the fear of like not people not knowing about yourself or something like that. Like now, everything in my life's been told to one person or another, or my wife or whoever, and it's you're not carrying that bag of rocks anymore, and it's also a forgiven thing. Like my stepdad, I was able to look past, what I thought he all did, and what he deserved, to like what was my part and where did I go wrong. And from that, I was able to go up to him and make my amends and say, like, past like all that stuff, and and him accept it. And now we have a good relationship today, and that happened in a lot of different ways. And it was just, and the suggestions that like he had for me, my sponsor, for stuff like I thought, oh well, I can't do anything about that, but oh wait, you can donate this, or you can slip something under someone's door, or, there's just a way to do everything, in a way. You can't turn back time, but you can make the best out of what you have, Yeah. So, that was all a great experience. And he helped me get out of myself, because I was literally like you can ask any of them. They always, like at my celebrations or whatever, they'll share like, yeah, we didn't think he was gonna make it. You know, like
Mm,
he was. I couldn't even like put a sentence there. I couldn't talk. I was like, really messed up. So the first time after 8 months, I didn't say I went back into a before I relapsed. I went back into a facility and got on medication because I was just so depressed, and I was living at my house, and there was all this alcohol, in the house I was living in, and and I wasn't mentally in a good space. And so I voluntarily was like, I need to go out and make a decision to get help for myself. And I did that. And I went into like a crisis unit and then into like a group home for a few months till I got, and that's really where I decided like that I'm going to get my crap together, and I'm going to, I'm going to work the steps. I'm going to, do what I'm going to do with my sponsor. And then I'm going to, decide I wanted to, like, I had been working on cars with an old guy up the street, which ended up being like just a critical person in my life, like life changing person.
mm,
Um, and at that point, like, I decided, okay, I'm gonna have a plan this time, and I'm gonna go through it. And so when I got back out of there, I did like on the job training and learn to work on cars and whatnot. And I worked every day. I'd go up to this old guy's house who was like a ex-Marine, CIA. Like, this guy had a million stories, and he was like
mm,
70 years old, but he kind of took me under his wing, and just a good guy. He'd go around and like help people in the neighborhood fix their cars, and he just really helped me in a big way. So I continued to do that. My life got better. My life got better. I ended up, starting to go to school. I went to school for working on cars after the on-the-job training thing, and I had a job. I, started to work at like a Walmart and a Tires Plus and Tire Kingdom and all that stuff. And I, after a couple of years clean, I ended up like finally getting in a relationship, right? Because my whole life, really, I was never like in a real one, you know, like somebody that like a long term one, right? That I cared for, and I met somebody that I was able to do that. That was a blessing that I had, and it didn't work out, but I
mm.
still don't regret it. Like, I look back and I'm like, I tried my best. I treated her like a lady. I did all this other stuff, and I felt, it broke my heart when we didn't, when it didn't work out for whatever reasons. But uh, I don't feel regret about it, And then I continued going to school, and I got that degree, and
I want to go
yeah,
back a
yeah,
little bit when you were talking about, so you got on medication. So you feel like that.
yeah,
Number one, I really like the fact that like you had been around for 8 months, kind of got like 8 months clean, right? When you decided to go back and check yourself in that facility. I think that's super cool for the fact that like when you're coming off drugs or you're on drugs, you're going to be all over the place,
yeah,
and you gave yourself time to level out. Not that that's going to be everybody's story, but um, I really like that. The other thing is, did the medication, once you went that route and you said you're going to get yourself together, do you feel like that medication helped? How was your depression after all that?
yeah. So, repeat the first question, the first part you said.
Well, I was just saying the fact that you got 8 months clean, I think you said,
Yeah,
before you
yeah,
decided to
yeah,
go back into that facility,
yeah,
which I thought was cool because it gave you time to level out. The real question was, though, because you were so depressed, which led you back into that, was how do you feel like your depression started to improve, or your life started to improve once you got on those medications?
yeah. So part of the reason I got to that point is because I, didn't have a social life. Like, I left all my using and all that, and I got in that because didn't have drugs, I didn't have the social, so and then living life, on the terms that I was living. I was working, I was doing a cleanup crew at a job site and doing all that, and I just didn't feel like I was in the right place, in the right space of mind. So I made that decision and I went there. And I had, throughout my history, I was telling you before, of when I went in those different places, I had been on different types of medication here, there, And throughout that, and I always felt like I didn't want to be on it. Like, like I think they put me on it, but I shouldn't have been on it, type thing. Or like I started to get on it when I was, under like withdrawals or just coming off that kind of stuff. So when I continued to be on it, I didn't want to be on it. I thought like first it was like I was messed up. I was less of a person, and then second, that they tell you, some people say you have to be on it for life and all this other stuff. And I didn't believe that either. So this time though, I was like, I know I'm mixed up, so I'm willing to like trust in what the doctor says. Like I'm going to go there. I know they're going to put me on some type of medication but I'm going to be okay with it. And I'm not going to try to like get off it myself. I'm going to trust. Like I learned a little bit, by being in the room about just trusting the process and all that. So I said, I'm going to trust what the doctor says, and I'm going to work with them, with this and not try to do it myself. So once I got in there and I got in the group home and stabilized, you can't put your finger on it like, oh yeah, I felt better, like as soon as I did this or that. So after 3 months of being in there, I was in a good headspace and I was on the medication and I was staying on it. And yeah, so I pretty much stayed on that medication for a long time. I might have had it reduced or a little bit here and there, but pretty much the same stuff for years and years after that point, at that point in my life.
And it helped you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. Yeah, I just take it. It's not like something you take and you feel like it's helping you. I guess if you don't take, I never didn't not take it, right? So it was just part of my life, and I was level with it.
Well, I would say the comparison prior to, you just mentioned how you was, extremely depressed and would go in and cry and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then, afterwards, after some time, you're like getting in a relationship and you're doing these type of things. So that's a pretty start. I mean, I'm sure it's not like, it's never like that, but it's a pretty big contrast in life.
Yeah. I think part of it is the hope too. I didn't have, when I'm going through like my life's a shambles, I had no hope. So it's like, why? Like, why feel good? Why think things are going to get better? But once I was able to have a bit of hope in my life, it makes all the difference. So no matter what you're going through, you got a plan and you're going to be doing better and you're in a good space. So, and I continued to be in that and doing what I was doing, and I kind of just maintained that.
Yeah, and the surrendering and the taking responsibility for what was going on in your life also provides more confidence and feel good about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely doing that, like making the commitment, like, okay, Steve, I had to re-ask him if he's gonna be my sponsor and work me through the steps. And I started doing that, and I was making meetings while I was in that group home at that point. So life got better day by day. And then I got out of there and I continued, going to school and doing on-the-job training and just, my life got better and I wasn't using. And I got a few other friends in my life that were in the rooms, which made a huge difference, that I still know today, Steve and a few of them. But life got better, and I started to do healthier things. And by, not using the drugs anymore, I was able, because, when I'm using those, like that's all consuming. I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel healthy. I just can't do anything really productive as far as that. Life just kind of revolves around that and, more of that. But life got better, and, I continued to do that, and I became, part of that group, of people, and, picked up things here and there from what I heard, from other people, and, was able to just approach each day and, get through it. And be less crazy.
Yeah.
Less crazy. And, and then actually be able to give back, before I just, I go to my mom's house and, do laundry and, try to borrow money and, whatever. And I just take from everything, take from society and, now I was part of something that I contributed to, started working on myself, the step work, making amends, and looking at those things in my own self, which I either didn't want to look at or I didn't think I had a problem, and like addressing that and working through those things. Yeah.
Made a major difference. Yeah. So you mentioned about like doing things for others. Like that's such a big thing. Like the purpose that you're
Yeah.
such a hopeless human being, pretty much when you're out there using, and then you get clean and you learn how to stay clean. You learn the process. You're able to give
Yeah.
that away, and the purpose that it provides in your life. The way you feel about yourself from doing those things is just it's
Yeah.
immeasurable
Yeah.
almost.
It is. It's like it's a huge. It turns something that like is a bad experience or or an experience of your life that you're probably don't want to go through again, and you're able to use that, all the good, the bad, the ugly, and all that, and it's a blessing because you have that experience where you can help. Like there's a lot of people that are out there that could use help, and it's just a blessing of it gives you purpose. Like my life revolves around a lot of that now, having and direction from other people, like not just going around doing what I want to do the whole time.
Yeah.
Like my sponsor would be like, like suggest stuff to me, and I'll just simply fact he's my sponsor, and he said it, and I've got this stuff going on. I'll be more prone to listen and do other things like that, and it does give you a purpose, where um like I got after I moved to Jacksonville and lived up here. I started, I had no really God in my life, like my whole life. I think my parents had it in their life, but they never really impressed it on us and all that. So I kind of just didn't have any experience, not even a thought. I never thought about praying or anything. That was just like, for what? Like a waste of time, right? Like, am I really going to start praying for something in my life now? But as I started, getting through the steps, and it's a spiritually based program, I started to kind of have ideas and seek stuff like that, and it opened me up to, searching through that kind of stuff, and that became, I forgot where I was going with this.
With the religion, maybe?
Yeah, well, I was getting into that, but I thought we were talking about purpose,
Purpose.
and yeah, so I found, a, a way to, have an experience with that, and it's given me purpose in doing, and I was gonna say it all works together, like
Mhm.
helping people, like taking whatever it is, making amends, and then doing something for somebody else. Like the answer's in, um, and my friend Dan always says it, but like getting outside of yourself and being a service to others, and that really is true. Being able to help somebody, and or at least be an example or share your experience, or do something, because I don't think if I came in here and learned this way of life, I wouldn't have been opened up to what it's given me, and um, it's just a great thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have a pretty I don't want to say it's a unique story, but you got a story that not as many people are willing to share. So one thing I want to thank you. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your experience um, before and after recovery. Is there anything else that you wanted to like maybe share with people that are struggling right now?
Yeah. Well, I've watched a couple of your other, podcasts that you do, and it's amazing sometimes. Like, I've people that I know that were on here and watching, and I even learn more about the people that I've known for a long time because of what they share. Because you go through daily life, you don't share all that stuff,
Hmm.
or get into details. But you know, it sometimes you want to, like, there's people in my life that I want to get clean, and that it breaks my heart that they're not, and I know it breaks other people's hearts even more that they're not, but just you can't just say, "Hey, it's better this way," and do this, because nobody, I didn't listen to that. Nobody listens to it. But there is a better way, and to see that, people's lives do change, and they can change is, it's just amazing. And the experiences that you can have, even, through the difficult times, and like, I don't look back now. I mean, I screw up. I do things. I act out on, my uh, basic nature, and still try to, like, get obsessive and compulsive about things, or overeat, or whatever it may be. But the consequences aren't so bad, because, I have a bit of foundation in my life, and I have people in my life. But it's just life's changing. Life gets better, and I can't even express, like, the words, like, of how, amazing, like, life can get after, you stop doing that stuff. Like, I was able to, just go to school further and get a good job. And then I met my wife, who is just, like, the most perfect person. I couldn't have planned it out better myself. I think I applied at 50 jobs to go out to Colorado, because I wanted to go mountain biking, but I got this job here, the one I applied. And then I get this job, and it is with a place that is, like, the guy had, like, 30 some years clean, and the guy on the board of directors was his sponsor, who has, like, 40 something, and it's just a good group of people. And then I met my wife, and then it just, we're so, like, perfect together, and all the blessings that have come forth, just because, like, I'm living this way, and that I've met the people that I've met in these rooms are still, from day one, I know the people, and they're still there, for the simple fact that we just all, like, meet at the same place and continue to do the same thing. I feel like, there's other people in life that sometimes have lifelong friends, but maybe one or two, and that may still be the case. But I have a lot of, like, people that, I have good relationships out of just their, endlessly help me in one way or another, and allow me to feel again, and I think sometimes I'm a little hard, like, I'm not understanding and not tolerant, and all that stuff. But, this, I have constant reminders of, what's the right thing to do, and hearing other people, and hearing my story in other people. And, also, you can't help somebody if you don't practice it yourself, because they see right through you. So it's just a blessing, living like this, and having the people in my life, and that sometimes, through your own experience, like, you're able to help other people, that, God puts you in places, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Well said.
Okay.
Well said. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience. All right. Thanks.